Con with Time Lord Tanya. Tanya, how was your UBCon going?
UbiCon was good. Exhausting as usual, but it was good. There were a lot of friendly faces that I keep seeing, and some new ones too. So it's going really good at UbiCon.
You were doing a lot of the cosplay stuff and things. What all did you coordinate?
I didn't really coordinate a whole lot. I did kind of help out with a barefoot cosplay event. Um, but I didn't really coordinate a whole lot of cosplay stuff. I just kind of more or less showed up when people expected me to show up. That's all.
I think that's half of coordinating right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
I ran a whole hell of a lot of paranoia, and every single time, which even in different modules, they found a way to blow up the world. So
Well, at least you had a high body count.
we did have a high body count. Well, actually, we didn't. That or what the first group didn't really capture the feel of betraying each other, and actually were working together a bit, which was a, a little bit. Except for the beautiful thing was there were a couple of parents that had brought their 10-year-old daughter to their first convention, and this was her first paranoia game.
Ooh.
And she kind of caught on very quickly of how the game works once they put the electroshock collar on her.
Oh,
So
that.
that is definitely what I'm taking away. What moment are you taking away from the convention?
Uh, Gee, I don't know. I honestly, I'd have to say the UB Improv show with Dave Schwartz, who runs it every year. He just got back from. He had actually, it was 30 days since he had actually had throat cancer surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably, I think, the most memorable moment of the con was Dave still doing the improv show, regardless of how crappy he felt. So he was gonna plow through and do it.
You can't stop Dave. Cool. So you were telling me there that your Doctor Who campaign is going at full speed. What has happened in your world, Doctor Who world, since we last talked?
They actually managed to close a portal to keep an ancient god from essentially obliterating the Earth. So that's a good thing, I suppose.
Are you going Lovecraftian Doctor Who here?
I actually went very Lovecraftian. I pulled out an elder deity that is almost never used from Lovecraft mythos. Basically, the Dark Eye. I can't remember what its name is off the top of my head, but it's essentially more or less simplify things called the Dark Eye, and it's an elder nature deity who wants to destroy all things so that perfect balance, is achieved.
Cool. And so, have they already figured out and you've resolved the whole radar plot line with the Cybermen, or is that still going on?
We actually did deal with Robert Watson Watt and his invention of the radar during World War II. We kind of saved his life. He's actually a companion of the Doctor's now, which I did not actually expect. I expect the Doctor to go, "Hey, want to join us?" And at first he went, "You know what? You're all barmy. No." And then later on, there was actually a problem with shoot, I can't remember the figures now, but it was the man who invented the code breaking system
Mm.
for the English military. Benedict Cumberbatch did the movie about him, um, and they actually the that was the next plot line in my Doctor Who saga, was basically not saving him, but keeping the Germans from creating the perfect code that the Allies couldn't break. and they were essentially doing that by cyberizing a bunch of people and taking their brains and putting it and creating basically code talking machines. And
Hmm.
they were going to distribute them among the Axis powers to actually create a code that the Allies couldn't break. And so essentially what they had to do was basically stop that factory from actually getting into production, which they did rather magnificently by blowing it up.
I was just gonna ask, was there fire?
Well, there was much fire involved because Drax the Destroyer had to blow something up. But he and Jack Harkness seemed to be in some sort of bizarre quarrel with one another as to who was going to create the most damage to the Nazis. And eventually, we got to the point where we were going to blow up the factory, and Drax finally said, I am finally going to use one of my grenades, and then he hucked it out the door of the TARDIS as it vanishes, and it hit a gas line and just blew the whole thing up.
So how well did he roll? Was that an extraordinary success, or a yes and, or?
That was actually an extraordinary success because they decided to burn a story point to add a couple more dice to it when they rolled, just because they wanted that just absolute magnificent explosion that they could see from space.
Cool. So, are you working on your Doctor Who now that the Queen City Conquest Kickstarter's going? Are you working on Doctor Who for that yet?
Well, I'm definitely going to be doing D20 Modern Agents of Shield for that again. That actually went over very well the last time, so I'm just gonna,
People were talking about that. Yes.
yep. And yes, I am going to be running Doctor Who. Don't quite know what I'm going to do yet for it. It might actually depend on what's actually going with the series itself. I'm not sure when the premiere is supposed to be, but because I haven't really been paying attention all that much. But
Mm-hmm.
so that because we actually do have the new companion has been shown, so I'm kind of excited for that. But it'll be a one off. I'm not entirely certain what I'm going to do for it yet, but yeah, I actually do plan on running Doctor Who.
Cool. Do it on a Sunday. Do it on the Sunday. That's the day I.
The last time I tried running a game on Sunday, I was theoretically supposed to have a full table, but nobody showed up.
Yeah, that's. I always have that problem. I always give myself Sunday is the day that I play. That's
Yeah,
how I enjoy QCC.
yeah, it was kind of the problem is that it just none of my players showed up, so
Mm,
there was really nothing I could do about that.
yeah. I'm working on a two-part, an 8-hour Doctor Who deal, where I'm adapting the Horde of the Dragon Queen, the first mod campaign for 5e Dungeons and Dragons, and adapting it to be set Doctor Who in Buffalo.
Ooh, nice. So I'm assuming it's actually going to be something happening at a gaming convention or something
It'll
along.
be downtown. So it's just some of the Mike Robitaille will be one of the companions. There will be a member of the Sabres. The mayor of Buffalo will be a companion, possible companion, and the players will get to choose which doctor they use and which established companion that they get to use.
Yeah, I did that for my players too. I basically asked them, which doctor do you want? Because the doctor that you choose is going to determine the companions that you have available to you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I made my Doctor Who game for Queen City, I basically said, here's the doctors that you can choose from. Better choose wisely.
And they like to have that choice because they feel more comfortable role playing the ones that they love and are the closest with, and that seems fair.
Yeah, I mean, if I even did that for my current table, I basically said, okay, somebody's going to be the doctor, and whoever is the doctor gets to choose which doctor to play.
Cool. Going back to your campaign, what is your strategy and techniques for research on there? Do you use things that you see in documentaries or in Benedict Cumberbatch movies and go that hey that would make a great Doctor Who episode? Or do you look through? Are you an avid World War II research reader about what is your how do you get these, because you talk about historical areas, and I want to get ideas for listeners about how they can do historical Doctor Who pieces.
Well, I've always been a bit of a history buff anyway. So I mean, I have a catalog of early History Channel documentaries that's based nothing but on Greece and Rome. I mean,
Mm.
I own those. That's not stuff that it's because I purchased them and I went, oh, these would be perfect for either for use for gaming alone. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons, a historical game, or even a time traveling game like Doctor Who. I mean, you can use all kinds of information like that. Um, but it's I tend to use a lot of information from documentaries. Um, I I do play a lot from things that I find in TV shows and movies that are historically set, like the Benedict Cumberbatch movie, and the companion movie, which is where I got Robert Watson Watt from, Castles in the Sky, which starred Eddie Izzard. And so I basically the way I looked at it was those two movies are essentially the same universe. So then I took my Doctor Who plot that was revolving in World War II and basically placed those two films essentially within like the Doctor Who storyline, because there's no reason why they essentially can't all coexist, because these two films are historically set, and since Doctor Who is taking place in World War II, there's no reason why they all can't coexist with one another.
Mm-hmm.
um, which it tends to which you can actually do with film and television. And there's also you could also have a Star Trek Doctor Who campaign as well, based on the comics. I actually have the hardcover Doctor Who Next Generation comic, which, by the way, is absolutely fabulous.
Hmm.
I recommend anybody go read it because it is really good. But so you could actually do a Star Trek Doctor Who game if you really wanted to. What the great thing about Doctor Who is it because it the series itself is already a little wibbly wobbly. You can kind of slip it in almost anywhere.
So you're saying go with where your passions are, with where I mean you have the documentaries that you are passionate about and the movies that you're passionate about, so that other GMs should look at their shows of what do they have that they're passionate about and use that as the basis of their campaigns.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no point in looking in trying to figure out how you're going to based on your game if you don't have any love of prehistory. Then there's no point in setting an entire campaign in the Neolithic Stone Age, or even during the time of the dinosaurs and the great lizards, which, by the way, is a Doctor Who campaign source book that is has just been announced, which I am
Mm-hmm.
excited for. And we're going to deal with lizards and sorial races and all that, which is great. I'm actually really excited for this. And
Yes.
but if you don't have any interest in dinosaurs and that, then what's kind of the point? I mean, taking that, you could also, even if you love the Jurassic Park films, you could actually have essentially a Doctor Who Jurassic Park. I mean, we almost kind of sort of did that with Dinosaurs in Space, but I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't have a futuristic human society basically clone dinosaurs and create an amusement park or something, and then basically the Doctor and his companion goes, "Oh, we know how this is going to end, don't we?" Movies, there's going to be a lot of running and a lot of screaming and, "Oh my God, no! Ah!" And so, yes, you can have a lot of fun with that sort of thing.
Not just in the Silurian area, but with the sci-fi area that they say can't nothing to say that they can't do Jurassic Park on another planet in another time.
Um, in um, in the Coming of the Terraphiles Doctor Who novel, you're actually told that there is an entire civilization of aliens that have done nothing but study humanity and human history and basically recreate their entire civilization based on what they perceive as human beings. So you actually have a world where people are playing croquet on rhinoceri because what they perceive as human history has got kind of mangled and mashed up during the eons, and so they think that you're playing a game on the back of rhinoceri instead of horses. I
Cool.
mean, it's that sort of thing. I mean, it's an entire solar system that's like that. So I love that idea. Why couldn't you have like a weird Japanese anime world where there are little tiny pink haired girls in sailor suits with giant mecha fighting giant lizards? I mean, there could be a cult of Godzilla. I mean, you could do almost anything with that.
Oh, I'd love to see Doctor Who in a Godzilla movie.
I'm tempted to do that. I really am. I'm tempted to do
What a
Doctor.
great Queen City Conquest module that would be, too.
Would you like me to do Doctor Who meets Godzilla for a Queen?
Yes.
All right, I'll do it. I will officially say that is actually what I'm going to do for Queen City. Then I will do
Yes.
Godzilla.
So let's talk about some of the rules from our Happy Time Doctor Who Adventures in Time and Space from Cubicle 7. Go pick it up at your friendly local gaming store. It's not just in a box now, it's got a nice book. Uh, one of the rules that I don't use that often, and when I've drew it at conventions, it's not heavily used by the players, even though it's on their sheet, and I mention it in things that they can do. The boffin area. What does the boffin rules mean, and why is it essential to the Doctor Who game?
Okay, Boffin is for anyone who isn't familiar with basically the concept of the Boffin and the Boffin rule. Boffin actually is a term that was coined around World War II, so I'm actually rather familiar with it as a term. But it basically means that you're essentially an engineer who can make things out of spare parts into an object and make it work and do something else that may not necessarily that you may not necessarily have the tool or device to use. Um, for instance, the doctor, when they were trying to save Robert Watson Watt's life, basically created a EMP generator using spare parts that they had at in his workshop, and to create essentially a device to destroy the Cybermen that were coming at them. Robert also did the exact same thing. His actually looked a little more like a standard gun or rifle. Um, he actually was using K9 as a battery pack. He actually had a power cable attached to K9 because they just didn't have the power necessary to actually run two of these rifles together. So he actually ran his weapon off of K9 with K9's assistance because Robert is, of course, from World War II, which is a couple of steps away from where the Doctor and his companions are all located in the time frame. So basically, K9 helped Robert uh, use his Boffin skill to make the weapon, and that's what Boffin is basically really really good for. Is if you don't have a device that could really be useful for your game. You basically create the device and you make a buff and roll using it. It does burn one or two story points. I can't remember which to use, but it is very very handy when, especially you basically your players or companions come up with a plan, and but they don't may not necessarily have the tools on hand to actually complete their task, but they have the items that they can use to create the tool to then, or in this case, weapon to basically complete the task. That's what Boffin is really useful before. And I'm actually kind of surprised that you don't have more players that kind of use it.
I have
I
players that are more hooked on the idea of sonic screwdriver solves everything. And
uh,
so that they're not using the sonic screwdriver and the boffin element, they're just using the sonic screwdriver, which was my next question of how do you get away from that?
well, basically, you essentially you kind of work it into your players and tell them that the sonic screwdriver has limitations. It just does. There, it. We've been told that the sonic screwdriver won't open, a dead lock that actually has a very specific pattern to it that somehow allows a sonic screwdriver to not work on it. Um, we've been told that although and it's I've actually noticed this in the past couple of years with Doctor Who actually that they've gotten away from using the sonic screwdriver for all of the things, um, which is kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it, it's and it's I basically I basically tell the doctor's player, it's like actually yeah, you know what, the sonic screwdriver can't really do that. You think maybe it can, but it really can't. And you might add a couple of degrees of difficulty to a roll, not necessarily basically outright telling him no, your screwdriver can't do that. um, but you still kind of like increase say the difficulty level. If say the sonic screwdriver has to essentially fill in a missing part in a piece of matter, like the chain link fence in like 2005 season where Christopher Eccleston and Rose is repairing like the chain link fence, and you can basically see the chain link welding together. Basically, it's recreating like almost metal particles all out of thin air. My idea is that it is basically kind of it's it's almost creating matter out of thin air, which I'm not entirely happy with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you could say that it's actually kind of like stretching out the steel and sort of like pulling it together that way to create a repair. It may not necessarily be as a solid repair as what they may think it is. So it may actually be a weakness in the fence at that point. But the characters may not know that. So if say there is, an army that's actually marching toward them, and they push against the fence might actually fail there.
Mm.
And so then I might actually tell them, the doctor, it looks like the fence has actually failed in the place where the repair was made. So then the doctor might go, oh well, okay, that might not be a great idea the next time. We might actually want something a little more secure, instead of just relying on the sonic screwdriver to magically fix all of the things perfectly. That's something that you could actually do. Or it's just we just I'm just kind of sort of I just sort of gently push players away from using all the sonic devices for all the things. Much like Drax the Destroyer wants to solve all the things by either punching it to death or by beating it somehow or shooting it. Like, no, Drax, you can't solve all the problems with violence.
No, that is not a Centauran way of thinking.
It's not the Santaran way of thinking, but it's we Drax. No, you just can't automatically walk up to an army officer and beat them about the head and shoulders. You can't do that. Funny, but wrong.
So when are you doing a boffin sequence, how do you play out the finding the devices? Do you just let them make up stuff that they're using? Do you let them think things out? How or do you tell them of what they find that they can use? How do you play out the gathering of resources?
What usually happens is players ask me, is there anything I can use to make this thing? Because usually they have the idea first. It's like, hey, what if we actually we don't actually really have any great weapons that will actually stop the Cybermen cold. What if we make something? So then they ask me, okay, is there anything in the room or the vicinity that we can use to make this thing? then I can either tell them yes or no. In this case, it was an obvious yes, because it was essentially a workshop that used to create electrical devices. So they essentially had all the parts that they needed, or at least the parts that they could scavenge from other locations in a hurry to create the weapon in general. So that's essentially what I tell them. It's whether I mean the parts that they have are essentially a finite amount. So it's kind of like if the doctor's in the TARDIS and the doctor asks me, is there anything that we can use to create a gold glitter gun? It's like, well, yes, it's the TARDIS. There are obviously objects within the TARDIS that you could use to create a gold glitter gun. The problem is, it's the TARDIS. I mean, they're like one of like a gold bar could be 2 weeks away. You know,
Your adventure is suddenly finding the parts.
the finding the parts within the TARDIS, it was actually going to be the hardest part. I mean, are the parts in there located somewhere? Yes. Is it going to be insanely time consuming to find all of the parts? Yes.
Yes.
To break it to you, doctor, but although you are in a time and space machine, you actually don't have the time to actually look for the objects that you require. Oddly enough, all the objects that you need to make an EMF generator are actually over here.
Oh, do you use the wacky things like when they go when you go? Oh yeah, this is completed with a parasol or with a rubber duck. Is just happens to be what's required to tie it all together. Or do
Um,
you try to keep it a little bit more realistic as far as the
I
elements of used?
try to keep it more realistic, but if the doctor says I'm gonna take this rubber chicken and I'm gonna attach it to the device, and then if somebody bothers to ask, okay, does the rubber chicken actually do anything? No, but who cares? It's a rubber chicken. For all you know, that actually required some sort of latex rubber at some point to actually attach one part to another. And he didn't have any rubber bands, so he had the rubber chicken. So he actually, attached, just used the rubber chicken legs and just tied it off. And, you know,
Voila!
yeah.
What's your favorite Boffin moment that from your campaign?
Oh, the doctor actually tried in our last game with the Cybermen attempting to essentially cyberize people to create the code machines. There was the spidery device hanging from the ceiling, and the doctor essentially wanted to use this device to create a bomb, a timed bomb, so that if somebody had actually started up the device when they actually started up to use it, to actually blow up. And the doctor failed in his role miserably. Should have
He
been proud.
failed?
I just like the doctor rolled his dice and he told me what his success score was, and I said okay. And he goes, so did I succeed? And I just looked at him and I said, you don't know. It didn't actually worth it to just sort of explode immediately. I mean, that would have been stupid. You set it off to actually blow up when this specific event happens, when they basically go to power it up. And so you have no idea whether or not it actually functions as you intend. And he goes, oh, well, huh. And the player was actually stunned, like, okay, so now what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, you go do that next thing that you were going to
Mm-hmm.
do. I mean, it's you literally just don't know whether or not. And then And then when the Cybermen did go to power it up to actually, test to make sure that the power was actually functioning, because at one point the power actually had been shut off to the facility. So they just wanted to make sure that everything was now functioning properly. So when they went to go power it on, nothing happened.
Mm.
It didn't blow up. It didn't do it. Just didn't work. The doctor, because he failed so terribly at his role, he just broke it. He
Aw.
didn't.
It didn't.
Um,
It didn't start playing episodes of Sesame Street.
no, it didn't start playing episodes of Sesame Street. Well, there was no screen for it to actually play episodes of Sesame Street on.
That's what the rubber chicken's for.
So the doctor then had actually, so when they actually had powered up, even though the doctor wasn't in the room, the player actually asked, "So, do we hear an explosion from the adjoining room?" No. Do we hear anything? No. And the player is just stumped. Like, so nothing happens. Correct. Absolutely nothing happens. Correct. And the player is actually upset that nothing happened. He's actually going, well, I'm just, okay, that's it. Drax, you're just blowing up this place. Because I'm kind of ticked that this thing that I wanted to do just didn't happen. So that's just it. We're cutting the gas line. We're filling this place up with gas, and we're just blowing it. And Drax went, yes. Oh,
And that shows the usefulness of companions as opposed to the Doctor being a one man show.
yes, yes. He's basically like, Drax, you can now use your grenades. Finally.
Has that been a thing throughout the campaign? If you had a thing with the Doctor being the scene stealer of having so high of stats all around, that the companions feel like they're just accessories to him, or does it feel very balanced in their relationships and how they accomplish things?
Oddly, I thought it might be a little overbalanced. But I'm finding that at least at my table, it is pretty balanced. I've 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 had a little bit of issue with the player who plays as Clara, kind of feeling like she isn't, adding too much to the story, just because we do have Strax, we do have Madame Vestra, we do have Jack Harkness, and we do have K9. So she kind of feels almost like, as the normal human, she kind of feels like she's almost not contributing in a way, except that she has been the one who's actually been wandering off from the main group, and she's been snooping around, and she was the one who essentially found the engine room to the manufacturing facility. And she's the one who discovered the main gas line, and she's the one who went, okay, so why, if we actually just want to destroy this place, why don't we just cut the gas line, let the place fill up with gas, and then we all jump in the TARDIS and then just blow the place up? And then everybody's like, yeah, why don't we do that?
That's what Clara does.
Well, Clara does.
She empowers Strax.
Yes. Well, Strax and Jack have been going back and forth with one another for a while. Because Jack is my Jack is not the immortal Jack.
Okay?
I purposely made him the Jack that's still working for the time agency. So he's actually not immortal, because I thought if Jack was immortal, it would severely overbalance things.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could actually just have an immortal Jack step in front of a Dalek, have him shoot him, and then just get back up again in 30 minutes or so.
Right.
You know. So I made him as Jack from the time agency, and I basically worked it out so that the time agency is basically filling in for the Gallifreyans, who are essentially in the time stasis, and they're basically putting out the fires in the places in the universe where the timeline's getting a little wonky, and they send investigators. That's essentially what happened. Is
Okay.
that time agency sent Earth at this
Oh, okay.
figure out what went wrong. And so Jack actually has his own storyline happening parallel to the Doctor, and that's actually I've actually worked that out so that there have been other agents that have been sent to deal with this issue, but they've all disappeared. And Jack has actually just discovered that one of the people that they met at one point in the story was actually one of the missing time agents. They just didn't know it at the time.
Hmm.
So that is actually so Jack kind of has his own thing happening at the same time that the Doctor has his own thing happening.
So could be a thing where Jack's getting the call with
So
the
could be a
mission
thing where Jack's
for
getting the call with the mission for
the party.
the party.
Yes.
Very cool. Anything else
Very
you want to
cool.
talk about your campaign, about the Boffin rules or anything?
About the Boffin.
Not really. We didn't really use Boffin so much in the last game because that was essentially we have to stop the Nazis from summoning opening up a portal and summoning an ancient deity that will destroy the earth. So that was basically you have a timetable and go. And depending on what you do when will determine what happens in what sequence and whether or not you can stop the portal from opening, can't stop the portal from opening. How do you essentially keep the deity from entering their plane of existence and keeping it from essentially breaking free and sucking the life energy out of everything and everyone in the area.
How did you structure
So
that
that
using Doctor Who? That kind of thing, the structure where they have a limited time to accomplish a task. Like in Savage Worlds, they call it dramatic task. In Star Wars Saga, they called it skill challenge. How do you did you set that up?
I set it up like how I would in a convention setting. Um, I basically put a timer on where we start, and then 30 minutes into gameplay this event happens, and then 30 minutes into gameplay further from that this event happens. So I time it out almost exactly like that,
Hmm.
so that if they actually reach this point and they haven't achieved this goal to stop this from happening, then these are the consequences. And
Godzilla
that's
will
essentially,
reach this part of the build city.
huh?
Godzilla will reach this part of the city when the timer reaches this time.
Exactly. Yep. It's basically when the timer reaches this point, this is when all 3 points in the triangle basically start to power up when we reach because I basically worked it out using uh, once again using actual history and with not Goebbels. Damn, I'm names and me are just absolutely awful. Um, one of the Nazi high commanders was an actual occultist. So I basically used that as part of the story. And the great thing about the Dark Eye was that not only was it an ancient nature deity, but it was also an ancient German nature deity. And the occult for this deity was actually located near Nuremberg Castle. So and it was actually the mountains that are just east of the castle. So I could literally take the cult and stick them right there and actually use that. So I could actually use not only actual history, but Lovecraft's own mythos and tie them together. And so what I essentially had was I had the Cybermen basically being used as basically power generators to kick off um, basically kick off the opening of a portal. And so at the 30-minute mark, they start to power up. At the next 30-minute mark, they essentially have reached the apex of the energy generation and they start to create the rift in time and space. So then you can actually see the portal slowly open as time passes. And then in the next 30-minute mark, basically if you don't close that portal, the god starts to come through. And there was a lot of screaming and muttering. And by the way, everybody start to make a sanity check, which
I
was I kind of had to use some rules that were kind of buried in the Doctor Who rule book when it came to basically energy draining. I basically had points being siphoned from their intelligence and their wisdom or the equivalents thereof very slowly. If they made checks, then they could maintain they could actually keep from losing those points. If they didn't, then they either just kind of started to become a gibbering mass. They just kind of like curl up into a little ball, or they just kind of like stand there in shock, and they just can't move for 5 minutes or so, depending on how badly they failed and how many points were essentially taken away. Um, Thankfully, most of the player characters made their roles. A couple of them had to spend some story points in order to kind of keep that from happening. So they all didn't turn into insane gibbering masses when the dark god actually came through and there are writhing tentacles that are coming out and they're just going oh, like some of the Nazi soldiers did when they got scooped up and basically their life force sucked out of them and then turned into dust and then nothing. And then it's like, okay, we need to close the portal now, guys.
Cool. And that wasn't the end. There was another mark after that of when the god comes through, or from that point.
Well, essentially, if they hadn't closed the portal, they were they actually, for some bizarre reason, the doctor told when once the portal had opened and the dark god started to come through. I don't know why, but the doctor basically said, "Everyone into the TARDIS. We're leaving now." It's like, uh, Doctor, there's a dark deity coming through that's going to destroy the Earth. Maybe you don't want to do that. And so what I did was I had the TARDIS basically go, okay, I'm putting on the brakes. We're going to stop this and we're going to stop this now. So what I did was I basically had the TARDIS basically take a rolled up newspaper and hit the doctor upside the head with some information by basically disappearing from the castle and then reappearing inside the cultist's lair so they could essentially get some information about how they should deal with this. Because basically, what the cultists did was, in order they don't actually want to summon their dark god. They essentially want to keep the dark god from forming to begin with. Because you actually let the god loose on the world, it's basically game over.
Mm-hmm.
They had essentially imprisoned the deity in a completely separate realm of existence. And to keep the deity in place, they had essentially 4 or 5, I think it was 5, basically 5 elder guardians watching over the deity in its prison. Well, basically, what the doctor had to do at that point was to basically summon the ancient guardians to basically push the dark god back into the portal. And I essentially did that by early on in the game. Somebody had been given a trinket by someone else, just in case this sort of thing happened, so that I could fudge how things were supposed to go. But the little figure actually happened to resemble very much one of the ancient elder statues that was looking over the basically the cage that had once housed the elder deity, and to basically go, oh, okay, I get it. We're supposed to use this to push the god back in.
Yay!
Finally.
Was that Clara who figured it out?
Um, I don't remember if it was. I don't think the player for Clara was there. So I don't think Clara. Basically, I think it might have been Jack Harkness. I might have fudged that a little bit by because Jack with his risk communicator can call the time agency and basically ask for information. And once he had enough information based on who, what, when, where, why, and how, they could actually forward that info to him so he could go, oh, okay, these are ancient gods that are watching over, these are ancient guardians watching over the ancient god, which keep him trapped in his prison. So basically, this is what we have to do. So that's actually how you could use like the information rules, and especially the rule based on like the friends rule. I can't the friends trait, which basically you've got friends in high places
Mm-hmm.
and they can out. So that's actually a good way to use that rule. Is they basically contact you and feed you information that you need from time to time.
Very cool. Thank you, Time Lord Tanya, for talking to us about sanity and about boffins and about Godzilla versus Doctor Who. Very, very cool chat. And good luck with your campaign. I can't wait to hear about how it progresses.
And thank you for having me.
Anytime.